Hey, everybody. I hope you had a good weekend with the class, and it's time for shares and questions, especially questions that arose after the fact. Hopefully, you wrote them down or remember them. So you can unmute yourself or type in, and after that, we'll do a little practice. So go ahead and fire away.
And again, share some questions related to the class of last weekend.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, Megan.
Hey, Megan.
Hey, I only did the first day, but so I haven't even done the second half yet, but
Mhm.
is there a section that you think would work well to help the claustrophobia issue for me?
Hmm. Probably the part of the somatic nerves. It involves like all the like movement and skeletal muscle. It's the voluntary part of your nervous system. And if you think about like that idea of that, um, there isn't a reaction part that comes from the autonomic component, but it's still like I got to get out of here. I got to do this. There's something in the mechanisms about engaging the voluntary part,
Okay.
and I would say with a lot of the stuff that we do, we tackle the involuntary part quite a bit, because it's tied to a lot of health issues and things. But that aspect of the somatic nerves, I don't know. Like whenever I do it, like if you think about like even like deepening meditation or deepening what like before I go through and do ceremony, for example, even when I work the planets, anything that even angels a little bit, um I work the somatic nerves. It always makes it much deeper, makes it much stronger. And it does have an impact on our psychological aspects. And some of it could be just past experiences, but some of it is can just be like a trauma loop. We have trauma loops from past experiences, but like sometimes even when we have moved past it mentally and emotionally, it's still kind of like locked in the body. And that practice of feel like you feel like, okay, if I go out and get into a building or a closet or something, and it's like, sit and think of that, you observe it, and then you feel it in the body. I mean, part of what you're doing is you're breaking up trauma loops. I would do that as the practice, but then I would do that whole section on the somatic nerves. And it should help you break out of those trauma loops. And then
Okay.
also, the mudra that we were just doing at a start. If you didn't, where your left hand's like this and your right hand's like this, so you're kind of holding it like this. And so even when you go through, your these two are intertwined and you're holding it to the heart, but you can reflect on times where you're in smaller and smaller confinements, and then start to feel the triggering come up, and then just sit and observe it. You're not trying to make it go away, you're not trying to relax it or anything. You're just observing it. You're trying to shift out of intellect, right? Because anytime where something keeps happening repeatedly, it's either intellect, it's homeostasis, it's some sort of loop. And
Okay.
so the remedy for that is to be able to get to an intuitive place or a spontaneous place, in the body would be allostasis, where the body can shift or change. It doesn't change for very long, and then it goes back into homeostasis. But in that, the loops start to like break up a little bit, and then they'll reboot because we're always going to do loops. Like in the mind and the body, we're always going to do loops. But we want to like let go of what's in the loop, and then we want to have like kind of positive things in the loop where it's like reinforcing or supportive in nature. And so, do the somatic nerve part, feel it in the body, and then also do the mudra, like as you go through and contemplate those things in those situations. And it should help, continually kind of keep breaking out, like it'll break out and then it'll reconfigure. And so it should keep getting more and more refined over a period of time.
Yeah, awesome. And then is it your left hand that's like more against the chest with the fingers upward?
Right hand. So this
It's
is
your
my
right
right
hand.
hand. It's here, and then the
Okay,
left one is sideways, but so they're interlocking. So the left one's on the outside,
okay.
sit sideways. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. And
You're
also
so welcome.
to add, like the last class, the realization class has also been helping. Like I was
Oh,
in
good.
a situation last week where I had to go in a weird space, and I like 3 months ago I just would have left and been like, guess I'm not going to the meeting tonight. But
Right.
I got through it and I went to the meeting, and just it all died down, and I just forgot about it and went to the meeting in a really weird building that was like too far from the door and all that stuff. So it's all
Good. So it's getting
adding up.
better. So I would
Yeah.
just keep doing what you're doing and what we're talking about and everything. And, you know, um,
This sounds
yeah,
like it'll definitely help a lot too.
yeah.
Thank you so much.
And then also if thoughts arise, like, like if there's things from the past that maybe contributed to it, like it will start to rise up in the mind and then observe those situations as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
And a question also came in. On the weekend, you mentioned 3 goals of meditation, the first being oneness. Can you give an example of that? I'm not sure I know what you mean by oneness meditation. On the second two were awareness and focus, which I understand.
mhm. Oneness is the stimulation of the blue pearl, which is the mental permanent seed in the brain. It's in the middle of the pineal gland. And so, there's ways of going through and trying to stimulate that. That's one way. But the oneness that you're trying to have is like oneness with the soul. So at first we might even just have oneness between the body and the mind. Or excuse me. Yeah, the body and the mind. Right. And then there's a certain degree of oneness between the left brain, which is intellectual, repetitive, and the right side of the brain, which is more intuitive and more spontaneous. And to have these two things have a certain degree of oneness. They're almost like in opposition, but both can be true, and we can experience both at the same time. Then on a higher level, we start to have a level or degree of oneness where there's no separation between us and the higher soul. And then, with us and a teacher, us and a deity, us with God, us with earth, us with, these different aspects, there would be like a diminishing experience or a diminishing effect of us feeling separated from something. And so there starts to be a greater and greater level of oneness. So if you think of it like with interacting with like a teacher or something, you go, okay, at first I serve you, and then I connect with you, and then with the teacher, and then you know there starts to be a certain level or degree where you and I are one. And then there is no separation, there is no difference. And so you see, like in devotional practices, how sometimes people will practice a kind of oneness with the teacher. And the greatest example of this is Hanuman in the Hindu tradition. Hanuman, the reason why they call him Hanuman is they sometimes call him the monkey face god. And it's not that he's a monkey, but they portray him as a monkey because monkeys will mimic people. Like if you're you know out somewhere on vacation and you drop your sunglasses or something, the monkey picks them up, and as much as you try to get them from the monkey, you're not going to get it. But if you pick something up and you and the monkey are standing there and you throw the rock down, the monkey will throw your glasses down and pick it up because he mimicked, right? They mimic things. They're very good mimickers. And so Hanuman constantly observed the teacher and whatever he did, first physically, like in looks and dress, and then emotions, and then started to mimic like the thoughts, the ways of thinking, the teachings. And then as he refined his perception, he mimicked the teacher in the inner world. And so he's constantly watching, observing the teacher, and then constantly mimicking the teacher to the point where there starts to be a kind of oneness. And so I think the thing that's a little bit hard with oneness is it is the mental permanent seed, and we think about it in an intellectual way. I have to make this happen. I have to stimulate this. And And even when we begin to have like a level or degree of oneness or starting to experience the soul, there's still this opposition in the mind. And, in some of the deeper teachings, it always, in different traditions, they always talk about how there's these two aspects in the mind that are ever at odds with each other, and it's intellect and intuition, right? And so, the idea a lot of times is that we stimulate the mental permanency because it's the mental component, and it's how we fill our body with light, and how we experience oneness and how we receive communication from the soul. But really, for us to be able to anchor that in and to be able to experience and kind of walk with it, not just in meditation, but go, okay, I have this certain level or degree of awareness of oneness. How do I bring it into my life, and how do I bring it in my body, and how do I walk with it? Like, how do I bring it down to my feet and like walk in it in the everyday world? And the key there is the heart. The heart can hold two opposing things that are both true. It can hold them both and not be in conflict. And so, like, I think even the idea of, stimulating the mental permanent seed, which they call the blue pearl, looks as a mental process, but it's a hard thing to hold on to. And I think even in the teachings of that, there is this kind of thing that you have like this predicament that you have to kind of work through. And yes, it's a thing with the mind, but it also involves the heart. And it kind of even talks about it like in the beginning of the booklet when we're dealing with the mystical heart is, you know, being able to bring soul energy down into the heart, but also letting the heart and the perceptions of the heart be the guide for the mind. Because the mind, especially the intellect, is always going to deal with the past, things we've memorized. It's always going to deal with indirect experience, right? Intuition's much better at having direct experience and um, adjusting and adapting in the moment, learning, healing, evolving, innovating. But still, the more that the heart perceives, the better the intuition is. If we don't have a lot of perception with the heart, even though we might be intuitive a little bit, it's going to be a lot more based on just instinctive responses and not really like our higher faculties, not really the soul. So even like with intuition, there's like kind of levels of intuition. There's aspects of intuition. It's the whole principle and foundation of the three brains, where you're looking at instinct, and then you're looking at emotion, and then you're looking at thought processes. And so the idea of oneness is like simple yet complex, which even in itself is a predicament. You know what I mean? It is like it's so simple, yet it is so complex. And we have to be able to even hold on to that. And in doing so, that duality is we're trying to transcend that idea of duality. And so for a while, part of how we do it is you do focus and then you do awareness and then you do focus and then you do awareness. And pretty soon focus and awareness they get used to each other and they kind of start playing with each other a little bit nicer. And you know what I mean? They start tolerating each other a little bit and uh in that little by little it starts to produce a kind of oneness. And you know, even the idea of oneness can be said in a different way is we were just doing that in the Astara session is you begin aligning with the light. You begin aligning with first it's divine intelligence, but there's divine intelligences. And you know, like the planetary energies, you know, the sun, the moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, you know, Saturn, Venus, all these things are components of divine intelligence, and the earth components of divine intelligence, you know, nature components of divine intelligence. And so in doing the practice of oneness, part of what you're doing is you're in little pieces you start aligning with these different kinds of aspects of intelligence, you know, divine intelligence. Even the work with angels, you're working with a kind of intelligence that, you know, it's an energy with consciousness or an energy with intelligence. And by working with it, you begin to have deeper and deeper levels of oneness. And so I guess what I'm saying is it is really a thing that is more about direct perception. It's not really an intellectual idea because the intellectual components of it are at odds with each other. And so when we come at it from an intellectual point of view, we get stuck in the trap. You know, we get stuck in like, do I make it happen? How do I make it happen? How do I stimulate this? How do I? And you just kind of have to start having these experiences and letting things unfold. And the experiences come from focus, awareness, focus, awareness. Feel it in your body. Feel something weird in your body. And then you start to expand as you cultivate awareness and you keep observing something, letting something unfold. And as you keep having these experiences, eventually it produces a oneness. So focus eventually will produce awareness, right? And awareness gets stronger. And then when you go back to focus, it's stronger because you have awareness. And so you play with those two, but eventually the focus and awareness produces the oneness. And then at some point, they all come together. And in the Hindu tradition, that's referred to as samayama, when you have focus, awareness, and oneness all at once. And so, really, I'd say if I bottom lined it, it is the transcending the of duality, of the dualistic mind. Um, but it's really like the ability to sit with things that are at odds with each other and not be drawn into the story and not be drawn into avoidance and not be drawn into trying to make it something. You're just, and eventually we become aware of an energy or a light that flows through everything. Yeah.
And another question,
Mhm.
what is the difference in the effects of body awareness expansion versus expanding out during a meditation? on the
So,
body and psyche.
right. So there's expansion in awareness where you leave the body. Your consciousness leaves the body, right? And then there's expansion where you expand within the body, which is again another aspect of oneness, is you are expanding within the form. And I would say that is a little bit harder to do. Like it's doable, but it's a little bit harder to do, right? And so the idea of expanding out of the body is you kind of are letting go of some of the loops and the intellect, and you have to be able to detach. So the expansion of consciousness out of the body is really kind of refining your ability to let go of the past, let go of your thoughts, your opinions, your attachments to the outcome, to getting resolution, to this person, to this event, to this situation, right? And so you expand out of the consciousness and then you eventually kind of come back in, and then you expand out of the consciousness, and every time it's a little bit more refined. And at some point you just go, yeah, I expanded in meditation, but that's about all I experience. I'm not really expanding a lot more. Is like you've hit like a wall of the things that you can disconnect from, right? um I would say that does have an impact on some of the loops in the body, loops in the mind, loops in the environment. But the deeper healing, the deeper spiritual effect is being able to expand within the body. And I would say, when you expand out of the body, it's very blissful. You're like, whoa, man, that was amazing. When you expand in the body, you're a lot more conscious. Like it happens a lot slower. It generates this kind of momentum. But that very, very deeply begins to shift the body, shift the mind. It begins to shift how you interact with the environment. You start to develop a much deeper level of depth perception with how things manifest and how things flow in the world, and you begin aligning yourself and putting yourself more in the right place at the right time. And so both are good, you know but the deeper practice is the expansion within the form, because when you're expanding out of the body, you're expanding outside of the form, and then you're trying to bring like a higher kind of essence in. But the deeper level of development and expansion is to actually be able to expand within the form. So I would say they're not really separate, they're just different parts of the spectrum. It's like almost at first you need to learn how to be able to just expand. That's like kind of a big deal. Like it took me quite a while to be able to learn how to do that. Well, if I'm being honest, first couple of times I did it, it freaked me out and I didn't want to do it anymore. Like I was like, oh, I don't know what that was. I'm not doing that again, you know. And I was successful. I shut it down quite well. But then I started having these expansions, like that's really amazing. But you're still doing it outside of the form. And when you bring it in, it does change the form a little bit, your body, your thoughts, your opinions, even like how your physiology works. And the more that you're able to expand within the form, not only do you start shifting all those things, that is really where you're going to, I would say, transfigure the lower nature and transfigure the, the past. The past, not just in this lifetime, but before you came into the body. And a lot of that is below your feet, and so then it starts this cycle because focus is really tied to the movement of Kundalini. The more that you expand within the form, the more you're able to wake up that Kundalini energy and move it up, and then it opens up awareness to a higher degree and increases the oneness, and you're able to bring it back down and expand within the form, and more light starts to radiate down below your feet. You could say like people who are great teachers or saints, we think of like, well, they have a big heart, they have a big crown, they have a deep connection up above, they have tremendous guides. All of that is a byproduct of how much light is below their feet. How much light is below the feet. It's almost like when you experience most people are experiencing kind of what we call like the animal realm, like below their feet, just like our nature, our low nature and everything. But as we keep piercing through that, eventually we get to a realm that's associated with like the teachers and the gurus and the saints. And even below that is we start to experience the realm of like where holy masters and great beings like that, and even like deeper is where the bodhisattvas and the buddhas and the great yogis and the messiahs, all of them are going down deeper and deeper into this realm, and it's like kind of where they reside. So you could say heaven is within you, but so is hell. Hell is also within us, and it's just how much light do we have below our feet. It really comes down to that. Everything else is like a reflection of that, but the more that you bring light down below your feet, the stronger it is. And so the idea of saying like amen or or whom or so be it, any of these things that you would say at the end of a prayer or a mantra or something, all of that releases light like out of your feet down into the earth, right? So even chanting not necessarily om, but aum, or amen, or om ahum, right? Some version of that. um all of that is releasing light down below your feet.
Understood. Thank you. That makes sense. Thank you for that.
Mhm.
On Sunday, sorry, let me get this. I'm having a computer glitch. On Sunday, tinnitus was almost totally gone, but it came back on Monday. Any suggestions on what I can do for it? I really felt so relaxed and great when I got home Sunday.
Well, tinnitus, even though it's ringing in the ears, it's actually neurotransmitters not firing quite like they should, and you're actually hearing them in the brain. And so I would definitely work, it's going to be hard to say which one, but most likely it's going to be the aspect of the central nervous system that probably contributed to the reduction of the tinnitus. But I also say like using things like sage, like inhaling sage and sage on the wrist, like over a period of time should help to regulate those neurotransmitters. In the org programming also, there is a part for neurotransmitters. If I remember right, it's the threshold blend. Is that?
I'll have to look.
Yeah, we'll look that up. But just from the class, you could probably do the central nervous system, which is what, the third segment, I think? Segment four. Yeah, segment four. So try doing segment four and see if that does it for you.
Since the weekend, I have felt energy like soft, puffy clouds surrounding feet/ankles,
Hmm.
which sometimes moves up to encompass the knees. Is this a release of negative energy or expansion?
It could be, the dirtiest part of the aura is from the knee down, but especially the feet. And you're probably feeling that the aura feels lighter. Like, even though we were focusing on the nervous system, the aura and the chakras and the meridians, they released a lot. So that's what you're probably feeling. And so, the thing that I would say with a class is you don't have to do it like we did on the weekend where we marched through and did all those segments. Try just taking little pieces of it and try to maintain that or even continue to develop that aspect. But that should continue.
And yes, so it was just for the ARC programming for the tinnitus person. Number 33 is neurotransmitters, and the oil is threshold.
Yeah.
So that's a thing as well. And yeah, I think that's our questions and
How
share.
about, since we were talking about the somatic nerves with Megan, how about we jump into the somatic nervous system? So let me find it on my. So it's segment 6. And with that, we're going to pull out the first oil in application A, which is nerve help. You're going to pull out nerve help. And we're doing the 4 quadrants of the aura. So you have your nerve help. Begin inhaling on the whole left side of your body, left side of your face and neck, your left shoulder, your left ribs, left hip, all the way down to the left outer ankle. Nice, long, slow, deep breaths. Awareness is on the left side of the body. Now move to the front side of the body, the face and throat, the chest, the abdomen, down the fronts of your legs, all the way down to the tops of your feet. Right side of the body. The whole right side of the face and neck, the right shoulder, all the way down, the right hip, the right outer ankle. The back side of the body. And then pause and be still. And so now we're going to pull out the somatic equilibrium. In your kit, you're going to pull out somatic equilibrium. And with that, begin inhaling with your awareness on the brain. And those of you that were there on Sunday, remember like each part of the nervous system is involved with a certain kind of loops, right? And going back to what Megan was talking about with phobias, is that phobia is usually from a traumatic event, something from the past, and the loops in the somatic part of the nervous system have to do with like comfort or avoiding discomfort, something of that nature. And so this is why I had suggested that for Megan. I think we all could use that on some level, some degree. Um, like I said, I use this a lot before ceremony. Move your awareness to the spine. I guess like saying resolving some sort of pain or potential pain. It doesn't necessarily mean physical pain. It can be, because of a past event, or this looks like that event, or, you know, something of that nature. Your brain and spine both at the same time. The brain and soles of your feet. As you inhale, move your awareness up above the ankles. As you exhale, down into the earth. Just pause and be still. How's that, great? And so we're going to pull out the oil for application C, which is neuroplasticity. You're inhaling, your awareness is on the eyes. Your nostrils, your awareness is on the nostrils. The tongue, your awareness is on the tongue. The ears, the holes in your ears. In your face, your whole face. And then just let it go. And the last little piece, we're going to pull out the PEM loops. Your awareness is on the left side of the body. From the left side of the face all the way down to the left outer ankle. The front side of the body. The right side of the body. Whole right side. And then the back side of the body. Your awareness is on the back side of the body. And just let go. Okay. Let's see how that treats you. But like, the thing where, it's writing the notes for the deeper dive on the digestive system that we're going to be doing in a few weeks. It's a free class. Already starting to pull in things from this class into some of these other classes. So keep this kid handy. Yeah. So, okay, you guys, we're going to jump over to the Mystic Tool practice and hope you enjoyed. We'll be doing a 2.0 of this at some point. I'm not sure when, but we will. So